Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Open Mic. I'm your host, Johnny Kane, and we have a first time guest on the program. He is a new Sportscaster contributor. His name is Cam Ryan, a junior at Detroit Catholic Central High School. Cam Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, listen, I'm excited to listen to your commentary here because you're going to take a deep dive into the situation facing the Tigers right now, which is the decision. What do you do with Tarik Skubal entering his final year under contract? Before we get into the baseball specifics, what can you tell the listeners about yourself? Where are you at? What do you do? What keeps you busy?
Yeah, thanks, John. So I'm a junior at Detroit Catholic Central High School, class of 2027. I'm the head of broadcasting for our media club there, and I do play-by-play broadcasting for CC football, and I will transition into basketball once the football season's over. And then I also run a podcast called Beyond the Game. It is on Detroit Catholic Central's YouTube page, and we basically cover all Detroit sports and Catholic Central sports.
Love it, man. So you're locked in. What's the in a perfect world? Where do you see yourself, say, 10 years from today?
10 years from today, I would definitely like to get a job being a sports analyst, preferably in the city of Detroit, just so I can, analyze my teams that I've grown up watching and grown up to love.
Yeah, I love it, man. All right, dream big. I think you have a good foundation laid. We're gonna focus on baseball today. I thought you provided very thoughtful commentary on the situation that the Tigers have before them. I think before we all get into the becoming a sports analyst or sports broadcaster, sports reporter, at the end of the day, we're all fans first and foremost. That's where the love began. So I know you're a Tigers fan. Uh, as you see this situation, right? There's monetary investment on the side of the club. Obviously, from a player standpoint, for Tarik Skubal, he's got to do what's right for him and his family. None of us knows. None of us truly knows. What's going to take place, how it's going to all unfold, and obviously, there's things that'll have to happen that could change. A what's the market? B what's potential? What's possible to get in return? I think you listen to all offers. I think that's just a smart thing to do as any human being. They always never say never. Um, but as a fan, so you're a fan, but you get to be armchair GM, even though you're still in high school.
Yeah.
What would you do?
So obviously, as a fan and going down to the ballpark, I love Tarik Skubal, right? I mean, the guy's just absolutely unbelievable. I'm a baseball player myself, and I am a pitcher, so there's kind of that connection there. But at the same time, there just is a business side to this, and I think what it's going to come down to is what does the organization feel like? What state do they feel that they're in? And I think it's been very clear, watching the World Series with Toronto and LA, that the Tigers just overall aren't quite ready to go take that next step into a World Series and to give that big money to Tarik Skubal. So I think you got to trade him. I think that you have a lot of young talent up and coming, and I think if you can trade Skubal for more young talent and develop them up to that get to the point where they're all peaking and in their prime at the same time. I think that's going to be the route that Scott Harris is going to want to take, and I think he's said that a lot, that he wants to make sure he develops his young players. So I think they're going to trade him for a lot of prospects.
Well, it's back-to-back seasons, where they come within a win of playing for an ALCS. And again, you've got to, like you said, I mean, you have to crawl before you walk. It's one thing to get into a wild card, then you get to the DS, and you got to win a CS, then you got to go on and win a World Series. They're close. They are on the precipice. And when you talk about young players in return, just as a fan, when you watch this team, like what would you say would be if they were to get a haul in return, what would be the ingredients necessary in order for them to take a next step? Like, are there positions in your mind that they could target, answer those questions that could lift them to an ALCS and potentially a World Series championship?
Yeah. So again, personally, I think something that we saw throughout the course of the season, and that the fans kind of like to a spot that they like to blame, was the bullpen. Right, a lot of inconsistency throughout the season with the bullpen, And so I think if they're going to go out and trade Tarik Skubal, I think they need to certainly be able to get a couple of arms in the bullpen, specifically high velo guys with swing and miss stuff, right? We have, I think our best reliever or our closer would be Will Vest. The only problem with him is that I don't see him as a definite closing pitcher. I see him as a guy that, if we had a definite closing pitcher, he would be the guy we bring in the seventh, eighth inning, try to squeeze 6 outs out of him before we bring in the guy that can really slam the door. So I think from a pitching standpoint, they definitely need to get the bullpen updated a little bit. And then from the offensive perspective, I think they need a right-handed power bat to complement Spencer Torkelson, because we have a lot of young lefty talent in Riley Green, Parker Meadows, Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, Colt Keith. Like, we have a lot of lefty guys. I think if they can go out and sign, a really good power bat from the right side, I think that could definitely, upgrade their full lineup
Yeah.
from time.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. All right, here's Cam Ryan, new sportscaster contributor, a junior at Detroit Catholic Central High School, on the options in play for the Tigers, and ace pitcher Tarik Skubal.
Today, we're diving into one of the biggest headlines out of Comerica Park. That'd be none other than Tarik Skubal and his contract situation, his letter to Detroit fans, and what all this just means for the Tigers heading into next season. Detroit's ace is arguably the face of the team. He signed a 1-year, $10.15 million deal going into 2025 to, avoid all of the nonsense with kind of the contract situation and all of that. And he's under control until through 2026. So Tigers have all control this offseason and, of course, throughout the season next year, if that's what they decide to do with him. Now, before we talk about the contract situation, let's jump back to opening day of the 2025 season. Tarik Skubal wrote a letter to Detroit fans stating kind of where he was at in his contract situation and his personal feelings about the city and just what Detroit means to him. He said, "Detroit made me better, not just as a pitcher, but as a person." And he called the city a place that will let you fall and fight your way back. And I think that he meant absolutely everything that he said about the city in his letter. I think that his ultimate goal of the letter was to thank Detroit fans, because obviously going into the season, there were a lot of questions kind of about where he was at, where the front office was at, just about the whole sort of situation. And so I think he's very thankful for the fans. And I think he meant absolutely everything that he said in the letter that was directed to the city of Detroit and to the fan base. Now, however, I think the purpose of the letter was to take the fans' minds off of the situation at the same time. Another quote that I pulled from the letter was that he has unfinished business. So, what I saw in that letter was, okay, you have obviously this, huge contract situation. It's really, especially in baseball where there's no salary cap, it can get really controversial. So, when he says he has unfinished business, I think that's a message to the fans. He's like, all right, I've got, my contract situation. I just signed the deal for 2025. I'm here for 2025. We have unfinished business. He's focused on winning games now in the season, getting to the playoffs and performing well in the playoffs, which is exactly what he did. He pitched his arm out against the Guardians, and he pitched significantly well against the Mariners in that Game 5 in Seattle. So I think as far as the letter goes, he meant absolutely everything that he said about the culture of Detroit, about the fan base, and just about his personal feeling towards the Detroit Tigers organization. But at the same time, I think that letter was just kind of to calm everybody down. He's saying, we'll let that all kind of take place after the season. Right now, there's a job to do, and he has to go do that job, and that is obviously to win games. Now, let's get into sort of the contract situation. So I said obviously that he's under Tigers control through 2026. He's a generational pitcher with generational value to whatever the Tigers decide to do. And the way I personally see it, I think that the front office is going to have three options here with Tarik Skubal. Option number one is you give him his money. You say, you want this amount, you want to stay for this many years. You know what? You're our guy coming off of two amazing seasons. We're gonna lock that up, right? We're gonna make you a Tiger for life. You're gonna be our guy, and that obviously comes with pros and cons, which is what we'll get into after I explain the next two options. Um, the option number two would be to trade him, right? I said Skubal's a generational pitcher with generational value. That means that the Tigers can go shop him in the off season and try to, fill any holes that they have on the team with at the expense of Tarik Skubal. So that option number two is that they could go out, you could get a bunch of prospects. You get I think what they really need right now is another right-handed power bat and a couple of bullpen arms. And it might set you back a little bit there trading him. Say they don't make the playoffs next season, but they should still be competitive. Now, option three is where it gets a little bit interesting. You could keep him through the 2026 season. You're going to say, all right, we're going all in on a World Series. We're not going to trade him. We're keeping him here. This is last year. We're all in right now. So maybe you go sign another ace level pitcher. You bring him in as that 1-2 with Tarik Skubal, and that's your goal. That's the message that you're sending to the fan base. Now, obviously, all three options are that they come with the good and they come with the bad. So let's kind of break that down. What does that mean? Option one is giving him his money, keeping him here, making him a Tiger for life. Well, what would that mean? Well, it makes the fans happy, obviously, right? Tarik Skubal, I mean, he's our guy, right? Like, he really brought back the momentum towards the end of the 2024 season. He got the job done. He was our guy. Like, the fans love him, right? And also make sure that you have an ace for the next. I see the deal would be an 8 to 12 year deal, so it locks in an ace for the next decade of Detroit Tigers baseball. It can help, and that can also help the Tigers build a starting rotation around him. Remember, they have Jackson Jobe, who was one of their high prospects. He got a Tommy John surgery in the beginning of the year, so he'll be coming off of that injury. So they have him, they have Tarik Skubal, they have Jackson Jobe, and they also have Casey Mize, who's a former number one overall pick. So as far as the pros go, you're keeping the fans happy, you're keeping Skubal happy, you're keeping him here, and you're able to kind of build around him. Now, the cons to giving him that money is, well, it's looking like it's going to be $500 million, right? That's not pocket change to anybody in sports, and so that's where the whole are you signing him now or are you signing him later kind of deal works into itself. He's also 28 years old, and he's had I wouldn't say he's injury prone, but he's definitely had an injury history. Now, Skubal came off of a Tommy John surgery and he worked all the way back up into what he is now as the ace for the Tigers. And the other thing that we have to keep in mind when we're talking about these big, long contracts for X amount of money is the last time that they made a deal like this, it was with Miguel Cabrera, right? They signed him for 10 years, $300 million. The fans were ecstatic, right? Everyone, loves Miggy. We're keeping him here. He's a Tiger. Like, great. We've got a right-handed power bat. He's our guy. He's our three hitter. He's our cleanup hitter. That's our guy. But they signed him for 10 years, $300 million. For about the first 5 of those years, he was phenomenal, right? He's hitting for average. He's hitting for power. He's just doing everything right at the plate while playing a great defensive first base. But towards the end of his contract, those last 5 years, we'll say the team itself and Miguel Cabrera were kind of, going downhill a little bit. Now, option two would be to trade him. And that keeps their payroll low, right? They're not giving him $500 million, right? So they have money to work with when it comes to the other teams, or when it comes to the other spots that they need to fill on this team to get them back to being competitive in the postseason. They'll be getting a ton of young prospects with value, and something that Scott Harris likes to do a lot. He talks about this in the press all the time, is that he likes his guys, right? He likes to develop guys that have been in their system for a long time. So you trade Tarik Skubal, you get a bunch of high end prospects that the organization can develop over time. I think that is something that's all up Scott Harris's alley, and I think that would definitely be something that first of all, it's been something that he's made public. He said that they're going to try to shop Tarik Skubal in the winter negotiations. And with Skubal being such a generational pitcher with amazing stats, and he's coming off, his trade value is about as high as it's going to get, in my opinion. So they'll be able to they're going to get whatever they want and whoever they want for Tarik Skubal, and it will completely set you up for the future. And when we look at the roster right now, we see guys like Parker Meadows, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, Colt Keith. All of these guys have not quite hit their peak yet. We also have Kevin McGonigal and Max Clark coming up. We should see them in spring training and hopefully on opening day come 2026. So the way I see it, you trade Skubal, you bring in a bunch of prospects on top of all of the young talent that you already have, and you give it 2 to 3 years. I think that's when all of these guys start to peak at the same time. And on the other hand, you have the offense who is younger and just needs a little bit more time to kind of find their ground in the offense. Now, the cons, obviously, is that the average fan of the Detroit Tigers would be heartbroken. He's really brought that momentum up for Detroit Tigers baseball, and it sends a message to the fans a little bit that we're just not ready yet. And I think the problem with that is, well, if you're not ready right now, when exactly are you going to be ready to make a deal like this, right? Because they're coming off of 2 losses in Game 5 of the ALDS. So if you're not ready now, what exactly does ready look like to the Tigers organization? And I think it would also make the front office look like a little bit greedy in terms of like how the money works, right? So say we trade Skubal away. Well, what does that mean for all these other young prospects that are coming up? Are we just going to develop them, make them really great, and then trade them away and just keep rebuilding and rebuilding? Or are we going to say, okay, you know what? We're all in. We're giving you X amount of money. We're going to give you this help, these guys, and we're going for a World Series. I think that is what the Detroit fans would love to hear. Now, option number 3 is doing neither, right? So you're not giving him that big extension, but you're also not trading him. You're saying, you know what? We've got you under control for 2026. We're going to go all in this year. We're going to go shop the free agent market. We're going to bring you in more power at the plate. We're going to bring you in some more bullpen guys. And we're also probably going to bring you in another ace level pitcher that's going to kind of work that 1-2 with Tarik Skubal, because something that was a little inconsistent during the regular season last year, or 2025, was that they had the 1-2-3 with Skubal, Flaherty, and Mize. And Flaherty was a little bit hit or miss throughout the season as well with Mize. So I think they're definitely going to have to bring in another top level arm like that. So now the pros for option number 3 would be it still keeps the payroll reasonable, right? Now that you're not giving Skubal X amount of money, you have all this money to give to whoever they decide to bring in through free agency. It's going to make them probably the favorites in the AL, considering they keep Tarik Skubal and they bring in, whoever to make the offense a little bit better. And it basically sends a message to the fan base that I think everyone is hoping for, right? That they're all in, like they're ready to go. This is our year. And I think that, as a Tigers fan, that gets me fired up a little bit. All right, like let's go. This is our year. But at the same time, there are some cons that come to option number three, and that's, well, it'd be World Series or bust at that point. Let's say they keep Tarik Skubal through 2026, and they bring in all these guys, and like we're great through the regular season. Well, nobody really cares about the regular season. We care about the postseason. We're all in for a World Series, and I think the problem with that is that if say the Tigers go out in the ALDS again for a third year in a row, well, now you haven't really made any progress towards coming off of last year, and you're also not getting anything from Tarik Skubal, because the reality of the situation is that the Tigers are not going to be the highest bidder for Tarik Skubal at the end of 2026 if that's what they decide to do. They'll be outbid by LA, New York, Philly, right? Like all these huge markets. And so I think that it puts a lot of pressure on Scott Harris and the entire front office of the Detroit Tigers. And so now we're going to get into what I kind of personally would do. Me, a huge Detroit Tigers fan. I love Tarik Skubal. I've got his name on the back of my shirt right now. I was at the game against the Twins where he struck out 13 guys, right at home, Comerica, prime time, sellout crowd, and I mean it was just electric in terms of his availability. The best ability is availability, right? So I think that is kind of going to be just a little bit of what Scott Harris and Illich needs to kind of keep in mind when they're doing all this. And so when we talk about trades, I looked at some of the other ace level pitchers that have been traded recently, and one that I came across was Corbin Burns out of Milwaukee. They traded him to the Orioles last year for two prospects and the 34th overall pick. They got Joey Ortiz, who's a promising middle infield piece. He's got great defensive skills. He can also hit the ball out of the yard, which was great. And they got DL Hall, who's he was a lefty pitching talent with upside and potentially a starter or high leverage arm. Well, if they were to shop Tarik Skubal, I think at the very least what they would need is probably two really high prospects that would consist of a right-handed power bat, right? Because we already have the lefty talent in Clark, McGonigal, and Riley Green and Colt Heath. We get another right-handed power bat next to Spencer Torkelson. Right now, we've got a fluid order from 1 to 9 in the batting order. So we get a right-handed power bat, and then the other problem that we kind of had with the Tigers throughout the course of the season was the bullpen, of course. So say they don't go get another ace level starting pitcher because they have Jackson Jobe and Casey Mize. I think you need to get bullpen guys. So I'm thinking you get your right-handed power bat, and then I'm looking at three bullpen guys with high velo and swing and miss stuff, because that's just not what the Tigers bullpen has right now. They have Will Vest, who's their closer, but to me, Will Vest he's not a natural closer, right? Like they need a guy that can come in and he's sitting 102 and he's just putting guys away, right? He's got a filthy slider, like someone like Emmanuel Clase, right, from the Guardians, who was great for so long, or Aroldis Chapman. Like we need a definite closing pitcher, and then you bring in a couple of other guys, also high velo, swing and miss stuff. That kind of completes your bullpen, and then you have all of this hitting talent that is coming up and uprising. So when it comes to trading them and how it would kind of look for the Tigers, it might set them back a little bit in terms of, maybe they don't make the playoffs come 2026, right? Maybe they're just on the edge, but they still should be competitive enough. Now, the way I see it is with Green, Torque, Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, like all of these guys. Say you go get a bunch of other guys that are all young, give it 2 to 3 years, they're all going to be peaking in their prime. And I think that is when you say, okay, we're going all in. We're going to go, to free agency and bring in whatever piece we need to be a real World Series contender. Because as I'm watching the World Series right now, I think there's just a clear difference between the stuff that Toronto and Los Angeles has compared to the Dodgers, right? Especially at the plate, right? We cannot have those slumps that we went in through September and October with our heart of the order, right? If we're going to be World Series contenders, I don't think Wencel Perez can be our cleanup hitter, right? I think we need a definite, heart of the order that can get us runs in October. So that's kind of my take on the Tarik Skubal situation.
That was Cam Ryan from Detroit Catholic Central High School, one of our newest Sportscaster contributors, and really thoughtful commentary. It's certainly a story that will dominate the headlines in the coming months and into next season. How's it going to play out? That remains to be seen. I do want to mention that the Cy Young Awards will be announced next Wednesday, November the 12th. Tarik Skubal, along with Garrett Crochet of the Red Sox, and Hunter Brown of the Astros. You remember Hunter Brown, a former Wayne State product, grew up in St. Clair Shores, had a heck of a season. He's a heck of a kid. But Skubal right now, the likely back-to-back Cy Young winner. And he would join some elite company in the Tigers organization. Max Scherzer, of course, won it in 2013. Verlander in 2011. Willie Hernandez back in 1984. And Denny McLain won it outright in 68 and then shared it with Mike Cuellar of the Orioles in 1969. When we come back, we're going to shift back to the high school front and chat with a first-time individual state champion in high school tennis. You're listening to Open Mic here on WJR.